Hey, Life Fixers, hope you're having an awesome day. Are you ready to better understand yourself, your partner, and your marriage? You will today. Today, actually, you won't only understand your marriage, you'll understand all the other people in your lives that are struggling and are going through a hard time. We are going to have fun on today's episode. If you're new here, you'll want to catch up and listen to at least the past 10 episodes so that way you know what we're talking about, all on the same page, and could be in the same group as us to know what we're doing here. So let's get started. I'm excited. Today, we've got a couple who has a really interesting story, got involved in what they do in a really interesting way. And because of their position and their experience, they see things from a very, very different perspective. Thank you so much, Scott and Jennifer, for being here. I'm excited to be speaking with you. You want to start by telling us how you guys met?
That's a good story. It's a fun story because it's a 35-year-old story. We've been married for 35 years, and we actually met at a really cool little outside cantina on Mother's Day, 1986. And 20 days later, we were married. So in 20 days, we got married. And
good. And I just have to interrupt and say that he proposed on the 11th day. And so this is springtime, and we planned a winter wedding. So we weren't going to get married for many, many, many months. And just out on a little coffee date, he just flippantly said,
I wasn't flippantly. I meant it.
I know, but it was just in between a bite of pie to look over and say, I'd marry you tomorrow. And I thought about it for less than a second. And I said, I'm so busy tomorrow. I could fit it in on Friday because this was like a Monday. Right. And it's like, come on, a girl needs notice. At any rate. So just in the next 2 minutes, it was like, oh, you know what? I'll find a chapel. We'll fly to Vegas, and there, you don't need a blood test there. And we just started to banter back and forth. Like we both knew we were both dead serious.
Yeah. And Jenny met my two kids.
I hadn't.
Yeah. So it was.
How did you know so fast and so quick?
Well, we knew the day we met.
Yeah. For me, it was, I had always wanted, from my very first time I was, wanted to be want a girlfriend. So, 15, 14, whatever years old, I knew what kind of girl I wanted and never found that girl that fit all those kind of marks I wanted. I wanted, attractive and smart and self-sufficient and just grounded. So I didn't want a wild child kind of a girl. I wanted someone that was grounded, and yet she had the flair to be wild. She was definitely grounded. So for me, that's what I was looking for. And you have something.
Yeah. And I had just, I was 27, about to turn 28 years old. He was already 28 years old. So we were young. Now that we're in our 60s, we think that's so young. But back then it was so old because, so many people want to have a companion, from such an early age.
Yeah.
And so I had for years this like little list that was building. And so my list had this handsome, brunette, green-eyed man who was bigger than me, because I needed someone so that I could feel petite. So I needed him to be stocky. He needed to have more freckles than I did because I was obsessed with having too many freckles. But for someone to be able to play dot to dot with like forever, like that would just be so equally yoked. And
I see the competition didn't start now with like 11 minutes.
And then the most important thing on my list is that he had to have 2 children, and they had to be an exact size, one this size, one that size. They had to be out of diapers, speaking in complete sentences. One needed to be a boy, one needed to be a girl, because that way I wouldn't have any pressure, because I was on the fence about having kids. And I thought if I could just borrow some like every other weekend, and literally that's how often he had his kids, was every other weekend. So I married him. We eloped before I even met them, but the pictures were perfect. Just like, oh, they're adorable. This is like, and the list is much longer than that. But the bottom line is that within minutes of meeting him and chatting with him, I knew that he was checking all these boxes. So I was intrigued. I was interested. And so I hired him. I found out he was stripping. I said, oh, what are the chances? I'm throwing a party next weekend, like literally 6 days from now, and I have not found entertainment. Will you come strip at the bachelorette party that I'm hiring, that I'm throwing for my sister? So that's kind of how we met. That's how my family met him. Well, not my dad. My dad was not at the.
Thank goodness, if I would have shot me.
But my mom, my sister, my cousins, my aunts. And I just had given him a heads up. Hey, I'm dating a new guy and he forgot his camera. He's going to swing by. So when he interrupts, I do want to pull him in because he's so hot. I want you to meet him. I'm seriously dating this guy. But don't worry, he won't stay. We can keep having our party. So we're having our party, right? He comes at the appointed time. It's so funny to see the look on their faces, like the shock, and to have him taking it off and doing his thing. And it was awesome.
Yeah.
So my family said, oh, wow, he's perfect for you. And I said, I agree.
So you got the support right away.
Right out of the gate. And then I didn't meet your family. Like literally, I didn't meet anybody until after we had eloped. And I met his kids the next day.
But taking it back, it was kind of she met me in the middle of a mess.
That is a piece to the story.
I was an ex-LA County Sheriff's deputy. I had been working undercover in vice narcotics out of West Hollywood. And my life at the time was imploding. It was falling apart. And I unfortunately chose to self-medicate to deal with my emotional pain. And it snowballed into such a terrible place that I got arrested while on duty for, taking drugs. And I was on ABC, NBC, CBS one night in 1985. So here I meet Jenny 6 months later and say,
no longer than 6 months.
Well, October.
Because that was October of 85 and we met in May.
Months.
7, 8, 9 months later.
Okay. So later. And
I I had not watched the news that night. So I just want to clarify that I'm meeting a guy I have no clue. And you didn't tell me any of this until 24 hours later, because I don't know if at that hot swinging spot with the live music and, the cantina, it's the Sagebrush Cantina, if any of our listeners know Los Angeles. At any rate, I think that would have given me pause, but 24 hours of thinking about it, because when we met, we actually talked for hours.
Mm-hmm.
We talked for all afternoon, close to 5 hours.
On the day of the party or like after?
No,
Before.
No, the day that we met, we talked for hours. The following day, so we met on a Sunday. Monday, you told me, I was on the news and this is what happened and this is the mess that I'm in. So the party, so when we met is when I hired him for the following Saturday. So I did not fire him when I heard all this on Monday. I was all in. I'd had 24 hours to soak up who this guy was. And I knew that you were explaining circumstances and that they didn't define who he was. And I feel like so many listeners know what we're talking about when we talk about that visceral gut reaction that you get. And we too often don't trust it, but it's so worth trusting because even though his circumstances were messy, the long-term possibilities are why we're sitting with you today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
God. 35 years. What did you say?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. 35 years.
Yes, it was worth it. No.
Yeah, definitely. All right.
So how did you get started in the work that you're doing together?
So, I was facing 6 years as a maximum sentence for the, illegal behaviors that I was involved in, just to really support a habit that I had developed. And we pled guilty to that. And I got sentenced to 2 years. I did 13 months out of that. And when I got out,
Shorter due to good behavior.
right.
Yes.
And
Highly motivated to come back to me.
yeah, I was. But I had no idea what the heck I was going to do in life. And Jenny was in financial services. And I thought, okay, I'll go get an insurance license and do that, which later got revoked because you can't have a felony on your record and have an insurance license. But nevertheless, I was out kind of prospecting, and this gentleman walked up to me in this car dealership and big, huge, weightlifting kind of guy. And I knew he knew nothing about cars. And I just flat out asked him, it's like, what did you used to do? Because you haven't been doing this very long, have you? And he's like, no, I was a cop out in Port Hueneme. It's like, oh, I was an LA County Sheriff's deputy. Why aren't you a cop anymore? And he's, well, I got into steroids. It turned into cocaine and lost my career. And, I'm on 5 years probation. And it's like, my jaw dropped. It's like, are you kidding me? Me too. And so here we just get this divine appointment together, and we just developed a relationship, developed a business. So we went out and talked to all kinds of, schools and churches and service organizations, got contracts with Bank of America, IBM, other big Chevron Gas to do this management training, because people wanted to hear about,
HR was big.
They wanted to hear about, a story like ours. And once you get them intrigued, well, then you can teach. And so I knew from the very beginning when I met with him, it's like I came home and I went, Jenny, I found out what I want to do. It's this thing called intervention. I don't know what it really is, but I think I want to do that because it modeled so much of my undercover work. You surprise people, you interrupt their dysfunction, you get them somewhere where they need to be. And, instead of jail, it's rehab. And it just begins a whole new journey for them. And it was just like this perfect fit. And, went back to school and to get my certification as a drug and alcohol counselor, and got into the field because you can't make the phone ring, right? There wasn't enough work to just be like, all I do is interventions. So I worked in the treatment field for 16, 17 years, something like that, always wanting to just do intervention. And Jenny, in the beginning, it was like, she didn't want anything to do with that. She think that all those alcoholics and addicts are a bunch of crazy people. And
I deal with healthy people.
Yeah.
You deal with crazy people.
Yeah.
But I'm really smart with finances. And so I'll run the business. So I literally ran the financial end of the business. You and John formulated that business, did it as a partnership for a season of time. And I'll tell you what, we would lose cases because they would want a female. And so after a short enough period of time of losing enough cases,
seeing people suffer more, and you're like, I can't do this.
I'm a female. So it's sort of like if you hired me for your mom, it's like it would feel really different coming from a man, unless your mom would think he's hot, and then it would be like a leg up. So it isn't that as I've come into the business that I do the women and he does, the men, and we, roll the dice over the ones that are, in the middle. It's really that people get a gut feeling, they get a visceral reaction. And so they look at our little videos and they're like 1-2 minutes, and they just know in their knower, she's a better fit, he's a better fit, that kind of a thing. But I'm so happy because I found out that those crazy people are the most creative, the most sensitive, the most amazing people on the earth. And I feel sorry for everyone who's not discovered that they need recovery from something. Aren't you a little obsessive about something? And so just because it's not a substance or a process addiction like an eating disorder, which I had, by the way, before I met you, that it's just deep ground, and it's beautiful to do something on this level, because we're not like a doctor. We're not trying to
diagnose or treat,
analyze people. We're trying to take people from this stuck, tumultuous place where there's, alarm in their heart, to a place of peace and just thrilled that they brought breakthrough and invitation to the table. Because we don't help people make people do something. We help people get vulnerable and let their guard down and say, hey, this is on my mind, and this is what I long for, and this is what I'm afraid of. And it's so simplistic.
Well, what we're doing is people think of, this interruption or this intervention work like you're calling people out, you're justifying why they need help. And we take the opposite approach. We feel like, no, let's call them in, because there's so much distance and disconnect with dysfunction. So we can bring them back into the fold and remind them of how incredible and wonderful they are. They'll say yes. I mean, we've done over 2,000 interventions in 33 years.
Wow. So could you walk us through one of your interventions? What would it maybe look like?
So there's always a preparation day before we get in front of the person who's in need. And, that's usually about a 4.5 to 6 hour process. And during that process time, we're educating the families on addiction, on enabling, on codependency. We're trying to help them not be part of the problem, but only part of the solution. And then we help them through a letter writing phase. We have this incredible letter writing process and outline and a lot of other helping materials that these folks write the most amazing letters of love and truth. Again, calling them in, not calling them out. And we help them not write about what has happened. We help them write about what might happen, because people can hear what hasn't happened a whole lot easier than what has happened. And so we help them write these amazing letters. We role play it out. We strategize on how are we going to get in front of them? Because people see the intervention show and it's not how we do it. And we've been asked to be on that show a number of times. No, you don't show what really is done. It's made for drama. It's made for TV. We understand that. We get that. Thanks for making intervention a real good buzzword and more people know about it.
But our methodology is also different.
It is different.
And so there's that part, even if it weren't dramatized the way that it was.
So once we're all prepared, we talk about boundaries and whatnot. The very next day, this is how we do it. It's very much like when I was working undercover. So on the show, you'll see the whole family sitting in a room and the addict or the alcoholic comes walking into them. It's like, if that was me, I'd take one foot in and go, see ya, I'm out of here. Catch me if you can, And so better to walk into them than them into us. So what we do is we have the person sitting down with somebody who set up hey, I've got something I want to talk to you about. Hey, I'd love to get your opinion on something, which is walking in integrity. Because the truth is you do have something to talk about. You do want their opinion on something that is, will you get help? And so
and you just left out the part that actually 5 more people are walking through the door and are going to help us talk about this together.
But the point of it is that as we're walking through the door, the person in need, their reasoning mind gets kicked in immediately. And it's not like the police haven't walked in. These are their people, their aunt, their uncle, their family.
People who are significant.
So there's not this fight or flight immediately that takes place. It's more of a reasoning, like what's going on. And as we walk in, everybody gives the person a hug or a kiss or a handshake, whatever's appropriate. And then if it's me, I'm left standing there. So I'm standing in front of this person who they don't know me, but people are always so nice and so respectful in front of people they're meeting for the very first time. So we capitalize on that. And then we overload the reasoning mind by simply saying, hey, my name is Scott. It's such a pleasure to meet you. I've heard so many great things about you. I know this is a surprise and sorry for that, but hey, your family asked me to help them put their thoughts, their concerns together. We've helped them write these amazing letters they just want to read to you right now. So if you'd be so kind, just to let them read you their letters one after another without interrupting, and then we'll talk a little bit when they're done. It'll take about a half an hour and we'll be out of your hair, okay? And they look at me like a deer in the headlight, go, oh, okay. And they don't have a clue what I just said. But here's the beauty of what we do with every person. When it's their turn to read, they literally get out of their chair and they kneel or sit right at that person's feet, which is a point of honor. It's submissive, and you're close enough where you can actually touch the person. That physical touch is very, very powerful. And then they hear these amazing letters of love, of care, and yes, of concern, but they hear how much they love them, how much they, adore everything about them when they're in their right mind. And they hear about what might happen if they don't get help and what would happen if they do get help. And then they hear what we want. We want you to get help. And they get a hug and a kiss. And so it's this roller coaster ride. We're taking the person on. And then when it's all said and done, and we're all wiping our tears, us included, 3 questions. It's like, wow, you have such an amazing family. I mean, you feel loved, right? And they're like, yeah, they're like dripping in love. Never been loved on like this before. And I say, would you agree that you've been struggling? It's like, yeah. It's like, you ready to make a change, get some help? It's like, oh, okay. And then we talk about what help is. I mean, I kid you not, it is that simple 8 out of 10 times. And the 2 times out of 10 where it's not, they're kind of debating. They're like, well, and that's okay too. I don't want everybody to roll over like a little puppy dog wanting their belly rubbed. It's like, yeah, let's talk about this. And so we're just straight up and saying, here's what we think is the best option for you. And that 2 out of 10 that we have a little debate, one of them says, okay, only 1 out of 10 doesn't go. That's been our experience across the board. And it just blows people away. If I had a nickel for every time I wanted to lift a jaw up and go, see, I told you how powerful love is. And you'd be amazed. And so many people don't do it because they're afraid.
Right. And fear is the thing that you'd think, oh, it must be money. They can't afford it. It's like, no, it's fear is the largest barrier. That, and there's a couple of confusion points for people. People think that people have to hit a rock bottom in order to be ready or literally have the help work. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. Mm-hmm. And we do get so many sad reports of people who regret not doing something because now that person is no longer on the earth. So there's that whole rock bottom fallacy. It's just the furthest thing from the truth. They do not need to hit that rock bottom.
There has to be a strong motivator. So it could be rock bottom, but it could be just hearing what might happen. Could it be strong enough motivator? Could be an internal thing. Hopefully, if the person, as long as the motivation is strong enough, then
and because our presenting what we're afraid could happen could be the vicarious hitting of that rock bottom. And so people aren't giving the gravity to the fact that, hey, your brain, it processes, it's taken in everything, whether it's true or false. It's just like, if you can connect to it, then it has an impact on the brain.
People go because they care about the ones that are in front of them. That's the motivation.
Right.
So we always say that we're not the heroes in the story. We're the guide. We're the guide. Mm-hmm. We just guide you through it. And you'll find out where you sit on the priority chain of their heart. Because if they were healthy enough to be the reason to go, they would have already gone. So therefore, they need you to be their reason. So this premise that they have to be the reason it won't work if they don't do it for themselves is a complete partial truth. It's not a whole truth. It's a partial truth. So let us be your reason today. We're okay with that. And so
let's say someone, either a marriage or just a family member that they know has an addiction, and what could they do? What would you suggest them to go and support that person to go and get help?
Well, we're obviously real big believers in a written word, to have something written down on paper, because when you're emotionally connected to somebody, the intellect takes second seat. The emotions are stronger than the intellect. And I think that timing and strategy are super important in the answer to that question. And so it doesn't have to be this glorified, bona fide, big intervention with tons of people. It can be a one-on-one thing. But I do believe that to write something down, write whatever you're concerned about, have a solution based on it. But more than that, I think, lead with love. And I think a great way to do that is to remind the person why you love them, to always start with that. And then, you identify what the issue is, the problem is, and have a solution attached to it, but have it on paper, because if you don't want the person to respond right away, at least they've got the reference piece to look at, and they can't assume that you meant this or that because it's written in black and white, and they can come back to you after they've processed it a little bit.
And I even want to say, when you say, identify the problem or make that point, I just want to tell you that this is where most people so blow it, because they appoint themselves judge and jury, analyst, strategist. They want to justify why this is their opinion, that this is a problem. And you're getting lost in what is only going to, slow down or put up a wall or bring in the defensiveness. So it's so simplistic to say, I could be so off, like, the finger isn't pointed at you, like, I think you're off. It's the finger's pointing at me. I could be off, but I feel just an unrest. And if you're struggling with X, Y, or Z, I'd want to be the first person that you thought of that you could reach out to and get help. Period. So do not say, when you ruined my birthday, when you were this, when you were that, like this no is facts. Like, put your pointer back in its holster and don't be pulling it out unless you're pointing at yourself and saying, I have unrest, I'm concerned, I'm worried. If I'm off, forgive me, but I'd want you to do this for me if the shoe was on the other foot. And so then you're quickly jumping to, and I want to remind you why I love you. And I'll never forget the time when. And so it's about the love, and you're not trying to get into the weeds, the details of what's wrong.
So the worst, and just in a nutshell, the worst thing to do is to have a person feel like they've been convicted into help. Again, you want to entreat them.
Invite them.
That's the key.
Yeah. And if I was going at 1-to-1, so like say you're worried about your husband's wife, your husband's sister's husband, like just something where, like whatever the dynamics, whatever the correlation is, even if it's your very own spouse, you don't want to use up the thunder that it would be of a group doing an intervention. If you're trying it one-on-one, you've really got to soft shoe it. And that way you see if they go, no, there's nothing wrong, and they totally back off. And then you can go back to your people and build your team and do a proper intervention. Mm-hmm. But one thing I would want all your listeners to really hear is how if we could all change how we just repress those little knowings and senses that we get. And then we get busy and we get distracted and we just find a way where we're guilty of minimizing and downplaying how much more wonderful, how is this no different than cancer or diabetes, that it's always better to find out early and do an early intervention and have the early prognosis that it's a better versus when it's terminal. And so I always like to say, if they're still breathing, there's still hope. And that if you really, if you are leading out with love and then following up with the gravity, that you got to get the order right. Because when you start with the gravity, I think, and I see, and it's like you've lost them. You've lost them. So that is a big piece to what we do. And literally, we are more passionate than when we began 3 decades ago, because of the heartwarming stories. And it's just incredible. People hide all their pain. There are so many people just functioning. And if you could just, see behind the veil, see behind the door.
And that's one of the beauties of the work that we get to do, is that we've been mantled for it. There's a calling in our lives to do this, but because of when we work with families, you'd be amazed how quickly they do let their guard down and how quickly they are able to speak their truth and show the emotion. I mean, we have seen buckets of tears. It's just, and it's a privilege. It's an honor, because it's like guttural. What we see people go through is what you typically see at funerals and births. It's right up
deep
there.
Water.
Yeah, it's very, very deep water.
We also, there's so many families, like so many blended families, and those dynamics, like that's a whole nother topic. And then our work, we work with adolescents, we work with grownups, we work with teenagers, we work with the elderly, we work with first responders and vets. And, so we're so fortunate, because even though what we're doing, which at its heart is family reconciliation, it's people who are afraid to speak their truth or their concern, and we're helping people do that. The uniqueness of the family systems that we meet, even though there's lots of common denominators, and then those different people. So you have the little old lady who won't get out of bed, and we're doing the intervention around her bed, right? She's
yeah. And I'm sure the results of the work afterwards, like with the health that they're going, is so much more helpful and really works versus just being forced into it, not really doing it because I know I'm meant to be doing this, but I don't really want to do it. Versus like knowing that you have a whole family supporting you, people caring about you, and you have like a real reason to want to do it.
Right.
Well, and also too, it's so hard for a family to know where to offer help to their loved one, because you look on the internet, you look at websites, they all look good. Everybody tells you what you want to hear. And what we've really prided ourselves on is finding the best of the best different treatment programs at all different costs. As people, not everybody has a ton of money, or they've got different insurances, but we literally are as objective as the families that we're serving.
Right. And even if we don't have all the answers, we're connected enough where it's like, oh, let me call so-and-so in Los Angeles. Let me call so-and-so on the East Coast. And they're like, who knows Dallas with their eyes shut and can say this one, that one, oh, avoid that, so we're connected. Mm-hmm. And that's part of all these decades in the industry, watching all of that.
Yeah.
That is so beautiful. I love it. I love it so much. I'm curious, Scott, what was the help that you got that helped you heal yourself?
Well, that's a
deep question.
Yeah, but it's a simple one too, where I did not go to formal treatment. I wished I would have. I wished I could have. It wasn't just on the table at my, season of life. And so I was at the beginning, just a mindset of willpower. I knew what I was doing was wrong. That never escaped my mind. I always knew it was wrong. I was not one who had all these, traumatic events, even though I had parents who split up and there wasn't harmony in the home, but I had a pretty good, young life growing up with sports and whatnot. So I was a disciplined person, but my walk of recovery was a spiritual walk. I always had, faith in God. And so when I met Jenny, and she was, very grounded in her faith, it was just an easy step into a more structured way of applying my recovery, which is really my life, into a faith-driven lane. And so, plugging back into church and being inspired to learn more, to catch up really. Jenny was the spiritual leader when we first got together. And not that there was like, oh, I'm supposed to be, I have to be kind of a thing, but I was inspired to be. And so, and then of course, when I was sent to prison for 13 months, well, I had a lot of reading time on my hands. And so I was able to really dive in and do introspective work. And really that's what treatment is. It's introspective work. And I just did my own. But when I went to college to become a counselor, I applied everything literally I learned to my walk.
It was so exciting. So he goes to UCSB, which is a great university up in Santa Barbara, California. And I was so excited. So he'd gotten out of prison and, we're like getting our life together here and we're going to go forward. And he's decided to do this. And I remember I literally asked him when he walked in the door from his first day of school, what'd you learn in school today? What was your
first
favorite
I put my
thing?
lunch pail down.
Right. I had made his lunch as well. And he looks me dead in the eye and he goes, I learned I'm an alcoholic addict. And I was like, hallelujah, because I knew that within hours of meeting you. I didn't say that. I just thought that. And
right.
Epiphany for him to have learned that day. And so first with everything you learned in school, and then as you started to work in a hospital and treatment centers and so on and so forth, like every day is a learning experience. And every day, like all the calls we take or the sharing, it all sews into just fortifying this recovery. And then I could relate it to the eating disorder side, which I had never gotten formal treatment for, but I was able to get in and out of the woods on that without going off to formal treatment. But, I'm not a big girl and I've been 50 pounds heavier. No, I'm sorry. I missaid that. I've been 50 pounds lighter. So, when you see the scale and you're going below 90 pounds and here I'm sitting here at 140 pounds, let me tell you, I look different that thin. And so all of this work really invited me into doing my work. And then that has caused, such a passion where there's more in common with dysfunction, whether yours is an eating disorder or a gambling obsession, or, even there's just more common ground than there is different. Kind of like how we all have red blood when you cut us. Like the blood color is the same. Would you close your eyes? Would you look at people with your eyes shut for a change? And that would make the world a better place.
For sure.
Oh, totally. Yes. Okay. So before I get to our final question, where could Life Fixers connect with you and learn more about you?
So a real easy way would be to anybody can call us for sure. So our toll-free number is 844-588-3267. Number's been the same for over 30 years. And our website, which is our business name, it's a made-up word, Carefrontations. So instead of confrontations, it's Carefrontations. So, like CARE, I care about you. The front door, that's what we walk through when we come in. And then just ATIONS.com, Carefrontations.com. So, and we are, we're not a hotline, but we have never, ever denied talking to anybody who called, because when people call, it's a big deal. And we don't play therapist, but we will absolutely hear you and then try to solution you into a new lane. And whether we help you or not, we can help. We can
still be, we can,
a voice of reason.
It can still be a call worth making.
Yeah.
It can still be a call worth making.
Exactly. Okay. So for our final question, How do you describe an extraordinary relationship without using love, trust, or connection?
Ooh, that's a good question. How would we describe a relationship without love, trust, or connection?
That's right.
Oh,
Loyalty is the first word that pops into my mind.
Okay. That's a good one.
I love dependability. You know, that you are a person of your word. You say what you mean what you say, so that there's that dependability, trust is so super important.
No, you weren't supposed to use that word.
Oh, okay.
Definitely honesty.
Kindness.
I want some fun.
I definitely need patience. And I think also an outward focus.
Meaning I need to be patient with you.
Yeah, and there's still that part.
Yeah. We'll be working on that after we're done with the podcast.
Get ready for 35 years. You're doing good.
Yeah. So I love the word fun. I mean, you got to have fun for sure. A lot of laughter.
Yeah. I mean, right into the friendship that it's paramount.
Yeah. We're buddies. We're best friends.
And then I think the ultimate glue, because it's not all going to be a bed of roses and it's not all going to be fun, is forgiveness. And commitment. Right. We talk a lot about that. We do a lot of recovery work. So don't pigeonhole us as interventionists. We do a lot of recovery work and family work and private intensives and those kinds of things. And the hallmark of what gets a family stuck is unforgiveness. And so we feel like I feel like forgiveness would be more important than trust, more important than anything. And we're not saying, we don't have enough time to unpack what all that means. But people know, they know.
Give me 2 more minutes. 2 more minutes. What do you have to say in forgiveness in 2 minutes?
Okay, gosh. So the weight of forgiveness is a weight worth wrestling with. That forgiveness starts to entwine with regret, and the two together can immobilize families, relationships, people. And the road to forgiveness is one of humility. So humility and gratitude, if we're just going to go back and pull a couple more words into a relationship that works, is I have to have the humility of being willing. If this is outside of me forgiving myself, which is a big thing that people need to work on, but we're talking about relationships. If I'm going to ask you to forgive me, I can't demand it. I can't impose my timetable on you. Mm-hmm. And I think too many people, because words have weight. So for example, I could want your forgiveness for something, or you could want my forgiveness for something. And I don't think that I should give, I don't feel like I offended you or this or that or the other. And so it's this coming together of finding your perspective matters. And even if that's not my perspective, it's your truth. And
also too, the patience, like you said, there's no timetable on one forgiving another. And so the one that is seeking forgiveness, I think, must be willing to be patient. And when it's ready, it'll be ready.
And even if it's spoken, it still might take that other person years to truly forgive you, for you both to be free from whatever that was.
And true forgiveness is never using the event or the thing that needs to be forgiven for as a weapon or a tool in the heat of the moment. It can be looked at for more learning, but never in the heat of the battle. Again, you have to choose to not bring it up.
Yeah. I think that really seals the deal. Okay, that was it. We know this is not even, when it doesn't even come on your mind anymore, and it's not even something that you even think about, then it's you're forgiven. Yeah.
It's a sweet road, and it seems to just lace through all the work that we do. And so it's so amazing. And so whether we're lighting the match to begin, burning that incident into little ashes so that it can just be literally
blown away.
Yep. Yeah.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for the work that you do. You do incredible things. and for your time today, sharing everything that you do with everyone and giving us real advice. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us. We
Thank
really
you
appreciate
so
it.
much.
Yeah, what an honor and privilege to be part of your day. Really appreciate it.
That's all for this episode of the Life Fix University podcast, but I have a huge favor to ask of you that will not only support the show, but will also help the people you love most. We are striving for 1 million downloads by the end of 2025, and we can't do this without your help. If you love this episode, please share it with 2 of your family and friends so they too can rewire their brains to have an extraordinary marriage. It was awesome spending time with you, and I'll see you on the next episode.